From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 18th. It is the week before Christmas, and in this video I want to address the pattern and pattern change so I can redefine that for some of you because some people are still not getting it. I saw an engagement on social media yesterday with my moderators going back and forth with a few people that just don't seem to grasp what a pattern change really is. So we're going to go over that in today's video. The pattern change did in fact occur, and I'll talk about that too. We're going to have a system at the end of the week, and we were talking about how we have to wait and see what happens over the weekend and how it evolves. We're getting a better understanding of how that's going to evolve here with this next system, so we'll go over that and show you what changed in that particular system. One more programming note too, we will not have a Weather Weeklies video each of the next 2 weeks because it's Christmas and it's New Year's. We are not open on either of those days, and it's not like I can put it on a different day because I run a weather consulting business and everything is structured. I have certain things happening on certain days and have to be done at certain times. I might have been able to get it done on Saturday in advance of Sunday, but that's Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, so that's not going to work either. So it's just an unfortunate thing where this is like a once in every 5-6 years deal when we have it falling on the same time on a Sunday when this Weather Weeklies video take place. So we're not going to have another one until January 8th, unfortunately. So it'll be the next Weather Weeklies video that we do because of the holiday schedule. Okay, so what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to, with the daily forecast videos that I do, if there's something coming up that needs to be spent, I need to spend a little bit more time on just because there's a lot of, like this week's storm, I'll do that in the daily forecast videos and add a little bit to it than I normally do because I know we're not going to have a Weather Weeklies video to fall back on Sunday. Okay, so if there's something that comes up in that time frame, we'll certainly, I'll talk about, this is the temperature patterns or something like that in the video so you understand, so we're not just totally missing out. I'm not going to totally ignore it. But this is our long-range outlook we did on Friday, and this is still very close to what we're expecting going forward. This is a pattern change, no matter how you want to look at it, whether you think it's supposed to be 20 degrees below zero right now or something, I don't know. But this is a pattern change and a sustainable pattern change. It's something that is, pattern change is something that is changing for the next couple of weeks. It's not necessarily months on end. It doesn't work like that here in the Northeast United States. This is not Minnesota where you have a choice of cold or very cold or extremely cold. That's your choices in winter, right? It's not like that here. It's a temperate climate here in this portion of the world. So, if we get a pattern change, that means we could have, it could be 2 weeks. It could be 3 weeks. It could be occasionally longer than that, but that's very rare. Okay, so these are patterns don't lock in for extremely long periods of time. But we do have the general periods going forward through the end of or near the end of this month at least slightly below average. And we're going to have that really big cold shot coming in behind the late week system. That's going to be later Friday through at least the middle of next week, and that's going to be very cold. Relative to average with highs in the 20s. So that's probably what you guys were thinking, or some of you were thinking that you're envisioning when we were talking about a pattern change. The pattern did in fact change, though. Okay, we're gonna have a moderation period right here around New Year's and first couple days of January. We have near average here, but it's probably going to be slightly above. But when I say slightly above, we're not talking about crazy numbers here. We're just talking about maybe upper 40s to near 50 for a couple of days within that stretch, and then we go back to slightly below average after that and remain that way for the remainder of the month of January, okay? And I'll show you why I think that is going to be the case. So I see this too, right around this area. Oh, we got big torch coming in right around New Year's. That's not a torch, okay? Relax. It is slightly above average. We have near average here. It might be a couple degrees above average. It's not going to be crazy, all right? We're not talking about 60s and 70s here. It's the stuff you get in social media, I guess, right? Here's all the slightly below average temperatures that are coming in after that, though. But we are still going with near to slightly above average here for December. That's going to be predicated on what this system at the end of the week does. If not, it's going to end up just below the threshold of what near average is. Here's what average is in December. Not a tremendous amount of snow expected across the region in December, but it did increase from what we had in November. And then January, it nearly doubles in many locations as far as what is normal for snowfall. And here's the updated year-to-date snowfall. Philadelphia still at a trace. Allentown now at 1.3 after that system this past week on Thursday. Thursday into Friday deal. Well, that happened on Thursday, actually. And then still a trace just here in Harrisburg, but up to 6.5 now in Scranton. But these are all red, okay, as you can see down the list here, because this is what normal is supposed to be. If this was above average, we'd be green. We're close here in Scranton, about an inch below, so you're closer to what average is now. But still below average across the region, and I think the way trends are going right now, again, I have this had this long range. This is expecting something different on Friday with the outcome for the system. So near to slightly above average is probably going to be slightly below if this misses here on, or largely misses. But it is going to evolve with some snow in it, so I'll get to that here in the video too. This is the pattern-changing storm that we had in the middle of the month. This was the one on Thursday and Friday. This was called the pattern changer because it did change the pattern. Again, it's got temperatures back into the 30s for highs. Temperatures are not supposed to be in the 30s for highs. They're supposed to be in the lower 40s. So now it's not a tremendous drop. And again, some of you expected that. But it still changes the upper air configuration in the northern hemisphere to get us a colder than average stretch beginning just past mid-month, which is when we expected it to happen. Well, that did happen. Okay? It might only be 4 or 5 degrees below average, but it's still below average. Again, what anybody's perception of what a pattern change is not relevant. Okay, a pattern change is a pattern change. That's what it is, and it locks in for an extended period of time, and it's going to do that. It's going to do that through the end of this month. So it's about 2 weeks. Okay, then you get a slight moderation for a couple days, and you go right back into colder temperatures again. So that's what a pattern change is. That's it. Especially in this part of the country. Again, we can't expect. You're going to have Minneapolis weather here in this region. It's not going to be a choice between cold, very cold and extremely cold. That's not our choices here. We have a temperate climate here. So expectations, I think, are a little skewed or warped or something here because I don't know what people are expecting. The longer months at a time cold like that, it just doesn't happen around here, okay? It just doesn't. But this did, in fact, change from the pattern change that we had, from the pattern we had in the beginning of the month in the upper air portion of things, right? And that's what we're looking at for what a pattern change is. I made this in red today on the bottom because people seem to miss this. They think a pattern change, they think, wow, we're getting lots of snow. Pattern change has nothing to do with snowfall. Snowfall is not a metric to define any pattern change at all. It is based on temperatures and upper air configurations, and that's it. 500 millibar height anomalies and the resultant change in temperature patterns. That's what we're looking at. Okay? And these don't actually, the pattern changing for just 2 weeks is a pattern change. It doesn't matter if it's only 2 weeks. Okay? In this area, that's what it's going to be. Okay? Here's that cold coming in over Christmas, and this is from the CPC. It looks very similar to what we have. I just like their graphic better because it's I have like an Atari 2600 image that I use here on MS Paint. But this is what the CPC has for that same period, December 23rd to 27th. Well, I can tell you the 23rd is going to be warm because that system's cutting, okay? And this was issued on December 17th, and NOAA understands that system's going to cut. But because the remaining 4 days in this period, this is a 5-day period between the 23rd and 27th, the remaining 4 days are going to be very below average. The entire period averages out below average. And that's what we do in long range when we're doing probability. So when you get to our long range table here and you see these periods that have, you know, like this period here between the 1st and 4th, we have near average. There are going to be a couple days and they're going to be slightly above average. Okay, but the entire period as a whole averages near average. Same thing here with these periods here. When we get later into the month of January, we have the 13th to 20th. That's a 7-day period, slightly below average. It doesn't mean that you can't have one day in there that it's going to turn warmer. But the entire week as a whole is going to be slightly below average when you average that week together, okay? Does it make sense? It's not a... And when you go into longer range projections here, this is probabilistic. This is not deterministic. So this is not something I can say, well, what's it going to do on January 15th? I don't know. I know the temperature average for that week is slightly below average. Does it mean on that day it's going to be slightly below average? No, it doesn't. It just means that entire week is going to do that. And you have to do that when you do long range. It's a probability-based thing. Okay? It's not an exact deterministic outcome. So with that being said, just, you know, we had this below average to well below average period here between the 24th and 27th. And the same thing, this current period we're in, which we're expecting that 1 day of warmth to come in ahead of that system coming at the end of the week. It's going to be because the entire week as a whole is going to average a slightly below average. Even adding in that 1 day is not going to skew the whole week, in other words, okay? And there seems to be a lot of confusion with that for some reason, but Here's the temperature pattern for the next 2 weeks. And again, starting off slightly below average, and then you're going to get a quick warm up here for a day, and that's it, okay? 1 day. And then you have, that's with our system cutting to the west. And then you have this cold coming in, very cold temperatures on Christmas. It's going to be one of the coldest Christmases that we've had in such a long time. And a few days after that, then it starts to moderate once we get out here around the 29th, 30th time frame. And then you get another shot of these are slightly above average temperatures. This is not crazy temperatures, but you got a couple days here, that's it, of slightly below average, or excuse me, slightly above average temperatures. And then the cold's going to be coming back in after that point, okay? And we know that because we look at all the GFS extended, it gets right back into rebuilds going into January, and it stays here this entire month, okay? Actually builds a little bit as we get into the third week on the GFS ensembles. As I go to the Euro Weekly, same general idea. You get a moderation that doesn't even show up in this anomaly here, but then it goes back to slightly below average. It remains that way for the remainder of January. So we should head back into a colder pattern. It's not just because the models are saying so, it's because the Madden-Julian oscillation is also indicating that that should happen. So here is, this is a measure of the convection in the equatorial regions across the globe. Right now, the starting off in the circle of death is where we're at right now. So it has the tropical forcing has no effect on the pattern, or very little, right? It is going to go for 4 days, go into the maritime continent here. This is phases 3 and 4. For 4 days, it goes into the maritime continent, which is a milder phase. That's why you're going to have that little milder period right around New Year's and a couple days after that, because of this Madden-Julian oscillation going into, briefly, the maritime continent, okay? After that, it continues to phase 6 and then eventually gets in phase 7. And the European ensemble guidance is doing the same thing. Doesn't quite take it in the maritime continent as much, but I think it's still going to be enough of an effect there where it is going to give us a couple warm days here. And Madden-Julian oscillation is always about a week lag or so. So in this case, this is coming through the circle, or out the maritime continent region, between the 21st and 25th. So a 7 to 10 day lag will bring that in around the end of the month, the 31st or so. And then it goes up until January 3rd or 4th, or probably 3rd, it looks like. And then the cooler temperatures come back in again, okay? Because it's going into more favorable phases up here in the Western Pacific. And I do think it's going to end up there eventually. How long is don't question. GFS ensemble takes it all the way into phase 7. It keeps it there. European ensemble very slowly takes it through 7 and then collapses back in the circle of death again. Okay, but it's be coming from phase 7, which is a favorable phase, which in January looks like this. This is phase 7 in January, so we have a colder phase, and that's why we're going to get the colder temperatures again. It's going to be more tropical forcing related as we get into January, it looks like, okay? So this is coming. It's just a matter of, now the snow is not part of it. And this, I'll tell you what, when I looked at this a couple weeks ago, and you can look at the past Weather Weeklies videos it did, this looked like a tremendous pattern to produce. It really did. The cold was going to be there. The setup was there. It just didn't. It's not look like it's going to happen. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. And I sympathize for those of you that are snow lovers, or are looking for this snow pattern or a pattern to produce all the snow, and it didn't, and it likely won't. Okay. But it is what it is. But I mean, the pattern was still very good to produce something. It just didn't produce something. Okay, it doesn't always, not a guarantee. That's why I want to go in these long range outlooks every week, and I put these winter storm signals. We're watching this time period for a potential storm. Blah 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 blah. But it does not. The last sentence. But it is not a guarantee for snow at any given location. It's not. It's a favorable pattern, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to produce a storm. Or in this case, a storm that affects us in the correct manner. So here's that end of week system we're going to talk about. And this is looking at a couple days ago when it was favorable. And why it was favorable is you had and this is something I use in the forum. This was not something I shared publicly, so I'm going to use this image because it's several days old. But your low pressure was all the way down here and really digging, and that's because this ridge was really able to pump up out here. It was in a bad position, but that's okay. It could be in a bad position if it's really amplified, okay? The more amplified it get, you can overcome that. Well, it kind of trended more toward less of a ridge height here, okay? Now, typically you want the ridge to be centered over like Boise, Idaho out here somewhere, right? Or the Intermountain West, not off the coast. But if it's strong enough, and you still have a negative EPO coupled with this, you can still get this thing to really dig, because what goes up in amplitude, you have an equal and opposite amplitude on the other side, which is the trough, and so it's going to have to dig that far down to compensate. So it had this, the NAO and the negative NAO here by Greenland. It had a blocking pattern up here in eastern Siberia. There was separation between the two. You have an upper level low that was up here, and it still is, and then another one that's up here that was shown to be up here in the Gulf of Alaska, or in the Aleutians, I'm sorry. But this ridge got all the way up into the Gulf of Alaska several days ago, okay? Here's the new runs that went this morning, and here's the difference, okay? Now you have a bridge. You had a gap in here between the NAO, and now you have a bridge going all the way across the poles with ridging, okay? This ridge out here is only up to Vancouver, okay? So it's not as amplified downstream, so upstream it's also not going to be as amplified, and this is going to cut to the west as a result of that, okay? So somebody was making a comment about 50-50 low and all that stuff. I saw some meteorologists making an argument about, well, there's a 50-50 low there, or there isn't one there, so it is or isn't going to. It had nothing to do with a 50-50 low. It had to do with what was going on up here in the Arctic Circle. And, by this bridging off up here, this area, when this bridged off over the top of the polar regions, this is forced to go a little bit stronger, and so is this, and they kind of squash this ridge a little bit. All right, so that ridge, not only is it off the coast in a bad position, but it's also not as amplified as shown several days ago, which was right here. So watch this. See how big that ridge is? Again, it's not the best position. It's a little bit further east too, but it was a lot more amplified, so what goes up must come down at the same amplitude, and you get a more digging trough in the eastern United States and a snowstorm out of that. So that is no longer the case. So what are we dealing with? This is what we're dealing with, okay? Now, I'm going to stop this here because this is Thursday morning, and you have, initially at least, you're going to have some wintry mix or snow in the interior with this little offshore low that we were talking about several days ago when I did the video last. And then you had you have some snow and wintry mix at the onset that I think is going to change over to rain. And then you might get a little break in here. Here's that change to rain, right? It pushes off to the north. You might get a break in here. And the next thing coming through is the Arctic front. Now, with this Arctic front, you're going to have rain again coming in on Friday. But there's going to be a sharp, very sharp temperature drop when this front comes through, okay? And we're talking about going from about 45 to 50 down to the 20s in a matter of hours. You're probably going to have some flash freeze concerns in there. It's going to be very windy. You're going to have rain changing to and ending as snow. So if you want a white Christmas, you're going to have to root for this Arctic front. This is not necessarily antifrontal snow. This is with an Arctic front with a negatively tilted trough, so you can get some added lift with that. So I know a lot of times people will say, oh, here we go. We're relying on back-end snow in order to get any kind of snow on the ground. Well, it's not your typical back-end snow situation. All right, it's an Arctic front on a negatively tilted trough, so it has a lot more lift to generate, and it can change over rain to snow and come down at a pretty good clip here for a very short time and give you some snow out of it. That's the best I can hope for. If you're looking for a white Christmas, it's the best I can offer right now, because that's what we have. I can show you just about everything. It's the GFS, but I can show you just about everything, and it's doing the same thing. It just doesn't matter. It's going to matter what how much moisture is left with that Arctic front. If it's going to change it over to snow in time enough to accumulate, and we only need an inch of snow to technically on the ground on Christmas morning to have a white Christmas by definition. So there's that Arctic front moving through. You might have some residual snow showers on Saturday after that moves through, but here is the probabilities of seeing 1 or more inches of snow through Saturday morning, and this is what you got. Okay, so the probabilities of scales on the bottom here. So this area by Philadelphia is maybe 20% or thereabout, and then it goes up to, when you get up to this middle area up here by I-78, it's more like a 50% chance of seeing that, and then percentages keep going up, as you get further northwest in our region to see at least an inch of snow between that period up through Saturday morning, December 24th. So this is probability based. That's all we can do right now. Can this still shift around a little bit? Yes, but I think we're getting the general idea of what's going to end up happening here. So you're going to have a cutting system, all right, but you will have enough cold in the place at first, because it is slightly below average, right, that you're going to have some snow wintry mix at the onset, at least in the interior, going over to rain, then a break. Then you have the Arctic front coming. It's going to be rain at first. It's going to warm up ahead of that Arctic front on Friday. And then as soon as that front goes through, it changes rain to snow for how long will determine how much accumulation you get, but you're going to have a sharp temperature drop coming in after that. That's going to go right into Christmas. Because this system here that we're talking about at the end of the week is missing, or at least cutting to the west here, that is going, and then you have this big trough moving in. This is also killing, I know snow lovers are going to kill me here, but it is what it is. Since it's taking this track, it doesn't leave the system that was behind it, that signal we have behind it, the winter storm signal. It's just a northern stream clipper now. It's not able to dig down to the south because the first storm didn't do that. All right, so the first storm would have had to hit in order to have a shot at the second one producing a winter storm, and that was, I think it's between 26 and 28 time frame we had listed. Well, it's still there, but that's up here. It's just a northern stream clipper system. Uncertain if we get anything out of that. It might just be snow showers or nothing at all, okay? And it is what it is because the first storm missed, okay? One sets up the other. This one's going, the primary for this storm, I don't know why it's just stopping here. The primary of this particular low is cutting well to the west. It's going to be going over somewhere over Cleveland. That's where the primary is going, just like that, okay? So that invites all this warm air out in front of it. But because it's taking that path instead of the earlier in the week path it was taking offshore, well, if it could do that, it changes the whole jet configuration, and the next one coming in would have been able to dive down and give us another shot at snow after Christmas. So I don't think, if the first one doesn't hit, does cut like this, your second one's not going to hit either. Okay, so then we're looking into January for the next snowfall. So real quick, we have the sea surface temperatures for this week updated, and it did get slightly cooler here by a couple tenths of a degree here in a few spots, but the general idea here is that still we're going to be continuing to weaken the La Nina and be heading toward an ENSO neutral, and I think we're still doing that in the month of January. Here's where we are right now, and the change from last week, again, slightly a couple tenths of a degree Celsius higher in a few spots here, but we're still kind of like between negative 0.7 and negative 0.1 Celsius, so about 0.09 on average here. All right, it needs to get down to 0.05 negative to get to ENSO neutral, and I do think we're going to do that in January. So does the CPC. This is still the latest update they have from November 2022. I don't have any update from that, but it's still they're expecting that once we get to this period here, January, February, March period, right here, this red line goes up above the negative 0.5 threshold, which would be for ENSO neutral. So that could change some things downstream for us too, and get out of the La Nina and more into an ENSO neutral pattern here at that point. So anyway, so just going to summarize here again, we're not going to have another video until January 8th, and hope everybody has a great, fantastic Christmas and New Year's holiday. I'll still be doing the daily forecast videos every single day. Just won't have the weather weeklies on Sunday because of how it falls. Watching the end of the week for the wintry start to rain, then rain ending snow with plummeting temperatures with the Arctic front. Again, that ending as snow part probably favoring the interior for any back-end accumulations, and this is a little bit more probable than a normal back-end situation, which you're trying to rely on some back-end flakes to save the day, so to speak, with a cutting system. But this is with the Arctic front, so it's a little bit different. We might have to get a little bit of accumulation out of that at the end. We'll see. Coldest Christmas in many years expected with an Arctic blast that arrives that Friday evening. And when it does, it sticks around to a couple days past Christmas. And there's going to be some really cold temperatures in there. Probably temperatures stuck in the 20s for New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And then maybe slowly moderating after that point, maybe getting up back closer to freezing a couple days after that. But it's going to be pretty cold, coldest we had in many years. And a transient moderation is expected near New Year's and just after, with cold returning after that. Okay, so it's only going to be a couple days. It's not a blowtorch. It's a short transient period of 3 to 4 days of near to slightly above average temperatures, and then it's back to slightly below after that. So I hope everybody understands what the pattern change thing is, because I keep hearing about this looks like such a great pattern, and it didn't produce snow. I mean, just because you have a great upper air pattern doesn't mean it's a guarantee to produce snow. I thought it would. It looked great. But, I've always said that snowfall is not a metric to define a pattern change. So I put that in red and bolded it today so everybody understands that. But the pattern did, in fact, change. It's not the same as it was in the beginning of the month of December. But we are going to be consistently below average, except for that one day when that system cuts to the west and invites warm air into the region. So, again, I will see you again on January 8th for the next Weather Weeklies video. Hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Take care, and make sure you follow the daily forecast videos throughout the week. I'll give you any update information, any changes that may be in place with that late week system expected in the Thursday-Friday time frame, especially with that Arctic front, and see what that does. At the very least, we're going to have windy conditions and some rapidly plummeting temperatures and flash freezes to talk about, and also perhaps some back-end snow here with that front itself once it changes over from rain to snow. Take care.